In the mid-1980s, the city of Los Angeles was gripped by fear as a series of brutal home invasions rocked the area. The perpetrator was Richard Ramirez, later known as the Night Stalker. Ramirez was a drifter with a dark past, having been exposed to graphic violence at an early age by his cousin, a Vietnam War veteran who had shown him pictures of atrocities committed during the war. Ramirez eventually turned to a life of crime, and between 1984 and 1985, he unleashed a reign of terror on Los Angeles. Ramirez's method of operation was terrifyingly unpredictable. He would break into homes late at night, often through unlocked windows, and attack residents while they slept. His crimes included murder, sexual assault, and burglary. What made his attacks so horrifying was their randomness. There was no clear pattern to his victims, making everyone feel vulnerable. From elderly couples to young women, no one was safe from Ramirez's violent rampages. He would kill some victims on the spot, while others were tortured before being left to die. As the number of murders and assaults mounted, police and the public alike were in a state of panic. Ramirez left few clues behind, making it difficult for authorities to track him down. His murders weren't just physical. His actions inflicted psychological trauma on the city, leaving people afraid to sleep in their own homes. Adding to the horror, Ramirez frequently claimed he was acting under the influence of Satan, and he left pentagrams scrawled at some crime scenes, further amplifying the fear. Ramirez's spree ended in 1985 when he was caught in a rare act of public bravery. After an eyewitness spotted his car and he was identified, a group of bystanders chased him down in East Los Angeles. They beat and subdued him until police arrived. The trial that followed became infamous for its graphic details, and Ramirez showed no remorse, often flashing satanic symbols and taunting victims' families in court. In 1989, he was convicted of 13 murders and sentenced to death, though he would remain on death row until his death from cancer in 2013. Ramirez's crimes left a lasting scar on Los Angeles, a reminder of the real-life horrors that can emerge from the dark recesses of human nature. Richard Ramirez's capture brought a sense of relief to Los Angeles, but the psychological impact of his crimes lingered long after his conviction. The randomness of his attacks, invading the most private of spaces, people's homes, left many residents unable to shake their paranoia. Ramirez had shattered the illusion of safety within one's own four walls, and the sheer brutality of his murders turned him into an almost mythical figure of terror. His trial, which began in 1988, was just as disturbing as his crimes. Ramirez frequently appeared in court with an unsettling smirk, often wearing sunglasses to hide his eyes, as if he enjoyed the notoriety. He attracted a following, with some women writing him love letters and visiting the courtroom daily. Despite the horror of his crimes, Ramirez's persona seemed to exert a strange, dark allure on certain individuals, highlighting how deeply the fascination with violence and evil runs in some corners of society. His defense was chaotic, and though Ramirez never denied his actions, his attorneys attempted to downplay the role of Satanism and mental illness. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Not only were his fingerprints found at several crime scenes, but numerous survivors of his attacks were able to identify him. One of the most chilling aspects of the case was the testimony from victims who described how Ramirez seemed to take pleasure in torturing them before letting them live, almost as if he wanted them to carry the trauma for the rest of their lives. The court proceedings took on a darkly theatrical tone, with Ramirez playing the role of villain to perfection. At one point, he turned to the jury and declared, "Hail Satan," further reinforcing his image as a monster. He was eventually sentenced to death, but his life on death row became another chapter in his grim saga. For decades, he remained a haunting figure, kept alive in the public's imagination by true crime documentaries, books, and interviews that revisited his gruesome legacy. Beyond the headlines and sensationalism, the horror of Ramirez's crimes was deeply personal for the victims and their families. Each murder represented not just a loss of life, but the destruction of entire families. Loved ones were left to grapple with the devastating effects of sudden violent death, and many survivors struggled with post-traumatic stress long after the case closed. Some victims never fully recovered, haunted by the memory of the man who invaded their homes and turned their lives into nightmares. Though Richard Ramirez died in 2013, the fear he instilled in a generation remains palpable. His reign of terror serves as a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can be to those who live on the fringes of society, driven by darkness and chaos. Even decades later, the Night Stalker's crimes remain among the most terrifying in American history, a stark example of how real-life horror can far exceed anything the human imagination could conjure.